The rain turned Violet Walsh's bookstore window into a watercolor painting of the street beyond, blurring the shapes of hurried pedestrians into streaks of color and motion. She stood behind the counter of Page and Prose, watching the storm roll through downtown Ashford, with the kind of satisfaction only a bookstore owner could feel on a day that would drive customers indoors. The Wednesday afternoon had been quiet until the bell above the door chimed, and a man walked in who looked like he belonged somewhere far more expensive than her cozy shop wedged between a coffee roaster and a vintage clothing store. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent, and his dark hair was dampened from the rain despite the umbrella he shook out before leaving it in the stand by the door. Violet had worked in this bookstore for 5 years before buying it from the retiring owner 2 years ago, and she had developed a sixth sense for customers. This man was either lost or slumming. "Can I help you find something?" she asked, setting down the inventory list she had been pretending to focus on. He turned toward her, and she caught the full force of his presence. Dark eyes, strong jaw, the kind of face that belonged on magazine covers or boardroom walls. But what struck her most was the uncertainty in his expression, like he had walked into unfamiliar territory and was not quite sure of the language. "I need books," he said, his voice deep and slightly rough around the edges. Violet waited for more, but he just stood there, water dripping from his expensive shoes onto her worn wooden floor. "Well, you have come to the right place. What kind of books?" "I do not know." He ran a hand through his damp hair, and something about the gesture made him seem more human, less like a cologne advertisement. "That is the problem." She came around the counter, intrigued despite herself. "Okay, what is this for? Gift, personal reading?" "Personal." He looked around the store, taking in the mismatched shelves she had painted in warm creams and soft greens, the reading nook with its threadbare armchair, the string lights she had hung because they made everything feel magical. "I realized recently that I have not read a book since college." "Not a real one, just business reports and market analyses." "How long ago was college?" 10 years. Violet studied him. He had to be around 32, 33, successful, obviously. Probably worked 80-hour weeks and ate lunch at his desk. "What did you read in college?" "Whatever was assigned. I was getting my MBA, so mostly textbooks." He met her eyes, and she saw something vulnerable there. "I want to remember what it feels like to read something just because it matters." That did it. Violet was a sucker for anyone who understood that books were not just entertainment or education, but something that could matter in a way that defied easy explanation. "Okay, I can work with that. Do you trust me? Should I?" "If you want good books, yes." She moved toward the fiction section, her mind already racing through possibilities. "What is your name?" "Zachary. Zachary Quinn." The name tickled something in her memory, but she pushed it aside. "I am Violet, Violet Walsh, and I am about to change your reading life." She pulled a slim volume from the shelf, its cover a deep blue. "Start with this. It is about a man who has to reckon with the life he built versus the life he wanted. Beautifully written, will gut you in the best way." Zachary took the book, reading the back cover with an intensity that made her think he approached everything this way. "I will take it. Wait, I am not done." She grabbed 3 more books, rapid fire, each one chosen with care. "This one is about human connection in the digital age." "This one is historical fiction set during World War II, will make you cry." "And this one is just fun, a mystery set in the Scottish Highlands." He held the stack, looking slightly overwhelmed. "This is a lot. You said you have not read in 10 years. We have catching up to do." She led him back to the counter, rang up the books. "That will be $73. He pulled out a credit card without even glancing at the total, which confirmed her suspicion that money was not a concern for him. As she processed the payment, she caught the name on the card. Zachary J. Quinn. Why did that sound familiar? When should I come back? He asked as she bagged the books. When you finish these. And if I want more recommendations before then. Violet handed him the bag, catching his gaze. Then I will be here. I am always here. He smiled for the first time, and it transformed his face entirely. Thank you, Violet. After he left, she Googled his name and felt her stomach drop. Zachary Quinn was the CEO of Quinn Global Holdings, a private equity firm worth billions. He had been featured in Forbes, Business Insider, and about a dozen other publications. He was 33, had built his company from a small investment fund into an empire, and was known for his aggressive acquisition strategies and his complete lack of a personal life. A billionaire had just walked into her bookstore asking for help. The next week passed normally. Violet opened the shop at 9, closed at 7, helped customers find books, processed online orders, and tried not to think about Zachary Quinn. She failed at that last part. Every time the bell chimed, she looked up hoping to see his tall frame in the doorway. He came back on a Tuesday morning, early enough that she was still brewing coffee in the back room. The bell chimed and she called out, "Be right there." "No rush," his deep voice responded. She nearly spilled the coffee. Smoothing down her sweater, a soft gray thing she had owned for years, she walked out to find him standing in front of the fiction section, still wearing a suit but looking slightly less rigid than before. "You came back," she said, trying to sound casual. "I finished them." He turned to her and she saw something different in his eyes, something awakened. "I finished all 4 books, in a week. I stayed up until 3 in the morning last night to finish the World War II one. You were right, I cried." He said it matter-of-factly, like crying over a book was a revelation worth noting. Violet felt a warmth spread through her chest. This was why she loved her job. "Which one was your favorite?" "The first one. The one about the man reckoning with his life." He paused. It felt personal. They stood there for a moment, the morning light filtering through the rain-spotted windows, and Violet realized she was in dangerous territory. This man, with his expensive suits and his billion-dollar company, had just admitted something vulnerable, and she was definitely not immune to vulnerability. "So I need more," he continued, "if you have the time." "I always have time for book recommendations. It is literally my job." She spent the next 20 minutes pulling books from shelves, asking him questions about what resonated with him, what he wanted to feel. He was surprisingly open, admitting that he wanted books that made him feel connected to something beyond profit margins and acquisition deals. She gave him 6 books this time, a mix of literary fiction, a memoir, and 1 poetry collection that she was not sure he would like but felt compelled to include. "Poetry?" he asked, raising an eyebrow at the slim volume. "Trust me. I did last time and you were right." He pulled out his credit card. "I am starting to think you know what you are doing. Years of practice." She rang him up, and this time when their hands brushed as she gave him the bag, she felt it like electricity. If he noticed, he did not show it. He just thanked her and left, and she watched him through the window as he climbed into a black car that probably cost more than her entire inventory. He came back 2 weeks later, then 4 days after that, then 3 days after that. Each time he had finished everything she recommended, and each time she gave him more. They developed a rhythm. He would arrive, they would talk about what he had read, she would learn a little more about him, and he would learn a little more about her. She discovered that he had grown up poor, that he had put himself through college on scholarships and student loans, that he had built his company through a combination of ruthless intelligence and relentless work. He discovered that she had majored in English literature, had worked at the bookstore to pay her way through school, had fallen so in love with the place that she had taken out a loan to buy it when the owner retired. "You ever take a day off?" he asked one afternoon in late October as she was ringing up his latest stack. "Sundays. The store is closed on Sundays." "What do you do on Sundays?" "Read, cook, go to the farmer's market, normal stuff." She handed him the bag. "What do you do when you are not working?" "I do not really stop working." "What about weekends?" "I am usually in the office." Violet frowned. "That sounds terrible." "It is just what I do." But he said it without conviction, and she wondered if their conversations about books, about stories where people learn to live differently, were starting to affect him. "You should try taking a Sunday off sometime," she said. "See what it feels like to not work." "Maybe I will." He did not, but he did start coming to the bookstore at different times. Sometimes in the morning before work, sometimes during lunch, once at 6:30 in the evening when she was about to close. Each visit stretched a little longer. They talked more. He told her about a difficult acquisition he was working on, and she told him about the struggles of keeping an independent bookstore afloat when everyone bought from online retailers. "Why do you do it?" he asked. "If it is so hard." "Because some things matter more than money." He looked at her like she had said something profound, and she wondered what it must be like to live in a world where everything was measured in dollars and returns on investment. November brought cold rain and early darkness. Violet started keeping the string lights on all day, making the bookstore glow like a warm haven against the gray streets outside. Zachary came in shaking rain from his hair, no umbrella this time, and she laughed at his drenched appearance. "Caught without an umbrella. What kind of CEO are you?" "The kind who was thinking about other things." He accepted the towel she offered, rubbing his hair dry. "I have a question." "Shoot." "Why do you always know the perfect book to recommend? It is like you can see inside my head." Violet leaned against the counter, considering. "I think I just pay attention. You tell me things without realizing it, and I love books enough to know which ones will speak to which people. You are good at it." "Thanks." She felt herself blushing, which was ridiculous. "What did you think about the last one?" "The one about the woman who inherits her grandmother's house." His face lit up, and they spent the next 40 minutes discussing the book, their conversation ranging from the specific passages he had loved to broader questions about family and legacy, and what we owe to the past. Other customers came and went, and Violet helped them while Zachary browsed, but she was always aware of him there, a presence that had become familiar and necessary. When he finally left with 4 new books, she realized that she looked forward to his visits more than anything else in her week. That was a problem. He was a billionaire. She owned a bookstore that barely broke even. They existed in different universes that had somehow overlapped in her small shop, but that overlap could not last forever. December arrived with the first snow. Violet decorated the bookstore with white lights and evergreen branches, making it smell like winter and look like something from a movie. She curated a table of holiday books, another of books that made good gifts, and tried to ignore the way her heart jumped every time the bell chimed. Zachary came in on a Tuesday afternoon with an unusual expression on his face. He looked nervous. "What is wrong?" she asked immediately. "Nothing is wrong. I just wanted to ask you something." He shifted his weight, and she realized she had never seen him uncertain before. "Would you have dinner with me?" Violet's breath caught. "Like a date?" "Yes, like a date." He met her eyes. "I know this is probably unprofessional and you might not be interested, but I have been coming here for months now, and every time I leave I wish I had stayed longer. And I think maybe that is not just about the books." She should say no. Every practical bone in her body told her to say no, but she had been drawn to him since that first day, had looked forward to his visits, had found herself thinking about him when she was alone in the shop. "Yes," she said. "I would like that." His smile was worth every risk. Friday night, Friday night. He picked her up at 7, driving himself in a car that was nice but not ostentatious, and took her to a restaurant that was elegant without being stuffy. They sat across from each other at a table by the window, watching snow fall onto the street outside, and talked the way they had been talking for months, except now it felt different. Charged. "Tell me something I do not know about you," he said over wine and pasta. "I wanted to be a writer when I was young," Violet admitted. "I used to write stories all the time, but somewhere along the way I realized I was better at loving other people's stories than creating my own." "Do you ever regret it?" "No, I think I found my place." She twirled pasta on her fork. "Your turn. Tell me something I do not know." "Before I started my company, I had a different job lined up, at a major investment bank in New York. Big salary, prestige, everything I thought I wanted." "What happened?" "I walked away the day before I was supposed to start. I realized I did not want to work for someone else's dream. I wanted to build my own." He paused. "Everyone thought I was insane. I had student loans, no safety net, but I did it anyway." "I am glad you did," Violet said. "Otherwise you might not have walked into my bookstore." "Best decision I ever made." They talked through dessert, through coffee, until the restaurant was closing and they had to leave. He drove her home, walking her to the door of her apartment above an art gallery, and they stood there in the cold with snow falling around them like they were inside a snow globe. "I had a really good time," she said. "So did I." He looked at her like he was memorizing her face. "Can I see you again? You see me all the time. Outside the bookstore, like this. I would like that." He kissed her then, soft and tentative, and she felt herself melt into it. When they pulled apart, they were both smiling. "Good night, Violet." "Good night, Zachary." She watched him drive away, then went upstairs and sat on her couch, touching her lips and wondering what she had just started. They fell into a pattern. He came to the bookstore during the week, and they went out on weekends. Dinner, movies, a walk through the botanical gardens despite the cold. He was different outside the context of business, softer somehow, more willing to laugh. She learned that he had a dry sense of humor, that he loved bad action movies, that he could cook surprisingly well. "My mom taught me," he explained one Sunday when he made her breakfast in his penthouse apartment, a space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. "She worked 2 jobs, but she always insisted we have dinner together. She would teach me to cook while we talked about our days." "Where is she now?" "She passed away 5 years ago. Cancer." His voice was steady, but she heard the grief underneath. "She never got to see the company really take off. I bought her a house the year before she died, but I wish I could have given her more time." Violet reached across the counter, taking his hand. "I am sure she was proud of you. I hope so." They did not talk about the disparity in their lives, the fact that his apartment probably cost more than she would make in a lifetime. It felt separate from what they were building together. But Violet was not naive. She knew it mattered. She saw the way people looked at them when they went out, the way waiters and hostesses treated him with deference. She saw the ease with which he moved through the world, never worrying about money or access. Her friends noticed too. Her best friend, Mara, who owned the coffee roaster next door, cornered her one morning before the shops opened. "So you are dating Zachary Quinn," Mara said, stirring sugar into her espresso. "We have been on a few dates." "A few dates? Violet, he is a billionaire. He has been coming to your shop for months. Everyone in the neighborhood has noticed." "Everyone? You are kidding, right? A man who looks like that, wearing suits that cost more than a used car, coming into a bookstore 3 times a week. People talk." Mara leaned forward. Are you being careful? What do you mean? I mean, he is a billionaire. You run a bookstore. What happens when he gets bored? What happens when he realizes you exist in completely different worlds? Violet had wondered the same thing late at night when she could not sleep. I do not know, but he is not what you think. He is genuine. I hope so. I just do not want you to get hurt. But Violet was already in too deep to protect herself. She was falling for him, had been falling since that first day when he admitted he wanted to read something that mattered. Every conversation, every date, every moment they spent together just made her fall harder. Christmas came, and Zachary invited her to spend it with him. I do not have family, he explained. It is usually just me and takeout, but I thought maybe we could do something different this year. She brought him to her family's house instead, to the chaos of her parents and 3 siblings, nieces and nephews running everywhere, the smell of ham and pine and cinnamon. He fit in surprisingly well, playing with the kids, helping her dad fix a broken shelf, talking to her mom about books. At the end of the night, as they drove back to the city, he was quiet. Thank you for that, he finally said. For what? For sharing your family, for letting me be part of something normal and good. He glanced at her. I have spent so much of my life building and acquiring and working. I forgot what it feels like to just be with people. You can be with people anytime you want. You just have to let yourself. I am starting to realize that. They spent New Year's Eve together, watching the city light up from his apartment, kissing at midnight like every cliché in every movie. Violet felt deliriously happy and terrified in equal measure. This felt too good to last. January was brutal. A snowstorm knocked out power in her neighborhood for 2 days, and she had to close the bookstore. Revenue was down from the holidays being over, and she stared at her accounts trying to figure out how to make rent. She did not tell Zachary. He had his own pressures, a major acquisition that was taking all his time. They saw each other less, snatched moments between his meetings and her work. I miss you, she said one night over the phone. I miss you too. This deal should close next week and then things will calm down. But when the deal closed, there was another one. And another. She started to see the truth of his life, the relentless pace that had defined him for so long. He was trying to balance it with their relationship, but she could see the strain. They fought for the first time in February, over something stupid. He was supposed to meet her for dinner and canceled at the last minute because of a meeting that ran late. She was understanding the first time and the second, but by the third time her patience wore thin. I rearranged my whole evening for you, she said when he finally called to apologize. I know and I am sorry, but this meeting was important. And I am not. Silence. Then, that is not fair. Is it not? Because from where I am standing, it feels like I am the thing you fit in when you have time, not the thing you make time for. That is not true. Is it not? When was the last time you chose me over work, Zachary? He did not have an answer and they ended the call stiffly, both frustrated. They made up 2 days later. He showed up at the bookstore with flowers and an apology. You were right. I have been letting work consume me again. I am trying to do better. I know you are. She took the flowers, white tulips, her favorite. I am sorry too. I knew what your life was like when we started this. That does not make it okay. He pulled her close and she let herself lean into him. I do not want to lose you over this. I do not want to lose you either. They tried harder after that. He set boundaries at work, left earlier, turned off his phone during their dates. She tried to be more understanding when things came up. It was not perfect, but it was real, and she valued that more than perfection. March brought the first signs of spring and with it, a crisis. Violet's landlord informed her that he was selling the building. She had first right of refusal to buy, but the price was far beyond what she could afford. She had 30 days to decide. She did not tell Zachary at first. This was her problem, her business. But as the deadline approached and she lay awake every night running numbers that did not work, she finally broke down and told him. They were at her apartment, cooking dinner together when she said, "I might have to close the bookstore." He stopped chopping vegetables. "What?" She explained the situation, trying to keep her voice steady. "I have looked at every option. I cannot get a loan big enough. Even if I could, the debt would be crushing. I think I have to let it go." "How much do you need?" "It does not matter." "I cannot afford it." "How much, Violet?" She told him the number and he did not even blink. "I will give it to you." "No." "Why not?" "Because I am not a charity case. Because I do not want your money. Because if you pay for this, then it is not really mine anymore." "That is ridiculous." He ran his hand through his hair, frustrated. "I have the money. You need the money. Why is this complicated?" "Because we are in a relationship, Zachary. Because if you pay for my bookstore, then I owe you something. The power dynamic shifts, and I cannot have that." "You would not owe me anything." "Would I not? What happens if we break up? Do I pay you back? Do you own part of my business? How does that work?" He was quiet for a long moment. "So you would rather lose the bookstore than accept help from me?" "I would rather lose the bookstore than lose myself." They stared at each other across the kitchen, and Violet felt something crack between them. This was the moment she had been afraid of, when the difference in their circumstances became too much to bridge. "I should go," he said finally. "Zachary." "No, you are right. I need to think about this." He left, and Violet sank onto her couch, tears streaming down her face. She had known this was too good to be true. She had known they existed in different worlds, but knowing it did not make it hurt any less. She did not hear from him for 3 days. They were the worst 3 days of her life. She threw herself into the bookstore, helping customers, organizing shelves, trying not to think about losing both the store and Zachary in one brutal blow. On the 4th day, he walked in at noon. He looked tired, his suit rumpled like he had not been sleeping. "I have a proposal," he said without preamble. "Zachary, just listen, please." He took a breath. "You are right. If I just give you the money, it changes things between us. So here is what I am thinking. I set up a small business loan through my company, market rate interest, normal terms. You buy the building. You pay me back over time, just like you would pay back any bank. Business and personal stay separate." Violet stared at him. "You would do that. I want you to have your bookstore. I want you to have the thing you love. And I want to do it in a way that lets you keep your independence." He stepped closer. "Because I am starting to realize that your independence, your strength, your refusal to compromise who you are, that is what I love about you. I do not want to change that. I want to support it." "You love me," he smiled, soft and real. "Yes, I love you. I have loved you since you handed me that first book and told me it would gut me. I have loved you through every conversation, every dinner, every moment we have spent together. I love you, and I do not want to lose you over money." She crossed the space between them in 3 steps, throwing her arms around his neck. "I love you too. I have been so scared to say it." "Why?" "Because we are so different. Because I kept thinking you would wake up one day and realize I am just a girl who runs a bookstore and you could have anyone. I do not want anyone. I want you." He pulled back to look at her face. "So what do you say? Will you let me help on your terms?" "Yes, thank you." They kissed there in the bookstore, with the afternoon sun streaming through the windows and customers browsing the shelves around them, and Violet felt something settle in her chest. This could work. They could make this work. The loan went through and Violet bought the building. She paid Zachary back every month, religiously, and he never once mentioned it. Their relationship deepened, roots growing down through the rest of spring and into summer. She met his business partners, and he became a fixture in her neighborhood, stopping by the coffee shop next door, chatting with the vintage clothing store owner, becoming part of her world even as she occasionally ventured into his. She went to a gala with him in June, wearing a dress she splurged on, and felt completely out of place among the designer gowns and casual discussions of million-dollar donations. But Zachary stayed by her side, his hand at the small of her back, and when someone asked what she did, he said, "She runs the best bookstore in the city," with such pride that she forgave him for bringing her. "That was awful," she said in the car afterward. "I know. I hate those things too." He loosened his tie. "Thank you for coming with me. Do you have to go to a lot of them, more than I would like?" He glanced at her. "We can skip the next one if you want." "No, I will go. If it is important to you, I will be there." She took his hand. "But you owe me a day of doing exactly what I want to do. Deal? What do you want to do? You will see." She made him spend an entire Saturday doing normal things. Farmer's market in the morning, cooking lunch together in her apartment, a walk through the park, used bookstores in the afternoon, takeout for dinner. He loved every minute of it. "I did not know life could be like this," he said as they sat on her couch that night, her head on his shoulder. "Like what? Simple. Good. I have spent so long chasing the next deal, the next acquisition. I forgot that the best things do not have to be complicated. They really do not." He was quiet for a moment, then said, "Move in with me." Violet sat up. "What? Move in with me?" "I know your apartment is above the shop, and that is convenient, but I want to wake up with you every morning. I want to have this every day. Your apartment is on the other side of the city, so I will drive you to work, or you can drive yourself. I will get you a car." "I do not need a car." "Okay, then I will drive you, or you can take a car service. The logistics do not matter. What matters is us." He took her hands. "I am in love with you, Violet. I want to build a life with you." She wanted to say yes immediately, but she made herself pause. "Can I think about it?" "Of course." She talked to Mara about it the next day, sitting in the coffee shop before they opened. "He wants you to move in?" Mara asked, eyebrows high. "Yes. And you are hesitating because it is a big step, because his world is so different from mine, because I am scared." "Of what?" "Of losing myself, of becoming someone I am not because I am trying to fit into his life." Mara stirred her coffee thoughtfully. "Has he ever asked you to change?" "No." "Has he ever made you feel like you are not enough?" "No, the opposite." "Then what are you really afraid of?" Violet thought about it. "That it will not last. That something this good cannot be real." "Violet, I have watched you two together for months now. The way he looks at you, the way he shows up for you, that is real. And yeah, he has more money than God, but that is not why you love him, and that is not why he loves you." Mara reached across the table, squeezing her hand. "Let yourself be happy." So she said yes. She moved into his penthouse in August, bringing her books and her mismatched furniture and her string lights. He made space for all of it, literally clearing out rooms for her things, telling her to make the place feel like home. It was an adjustment, living in such a big space, having a doorman and a view of the entire city. But it was also wonderful, waking up next to him, cooking breakfast together, falling asleep in his arms every night. Work found a new rhythm too. She still ran the bookstore and he still ran his company, but they carved out time for each other. Dinners together most nights, weekends away, small moments that added up to a life. In September, his company faced a crisis. A major acquisition fell through, costing millions in due diligence and legal fees. He came home tense and exhausted, and Violet did not try to fix it. She just held him and listened when he needed to talk, and gave him space when he needed to think. "I do not know what I would do without you," he said one night. "You would be fine. You are the strongest person I know." "I am not, though. I am good at business. But the rest of life, the important parts, I was terrible at that before you." You were not terrible. You were just focused on the wrong things. You made me refocus. In October, she had her own crisis when her biggest competitor, a chain bookstore, opened a location 3 blocks away. Sales dropped immediately. She tried everything: special events, discount codes, social media campaigns. Nothing worked as well as she needed. Zachary helped her strategize, not with money but with advice. He understood business in a way she did not, and together they came up with a plan. She leaned into what made her bookstore special: the personal recommendations, the cozy atmosphere, the community events. She started a book club that met monthly. She partnered with local schools. Slowly, her customers came back, choosing her shop over the chain because it meant something more. "You saved my bookstore," she said when the numbers finally stabilized. "No, you saved your bookstore. I just helped you see what you were already doing right." November came, and with it their 1-year anniversary of that first date. Zachary made reservations at the same restaurant, and Violet wore the same dress. They sat at the same table by the window, watching snow fall just like it had a year ago. "I have something for you," he said over dessert. "We said no gifts. This is not really a gift." He pulled a small box from his pocket, and Violet's heart stopped. "Before you panic, just listen." He opened the box, revealing a ring, simple, elegant, a single diamond on a gold band. "A year ago, I walked into your bookstore because I realized I had forgotten how to live. You gave me books, but you also gave me so much more. You gave me a reason to leave work early. You gave me someone to talk to about things that matter. You gave me a life that feels full and real and good." He took her hand. "I love you, Violet Walsh. I want to spend the rest of my life with you, buying every book you recommend, even though I know now that the recommendations mean you. Will you marry me?" She was crying, laughing, nodding all at once. "Yes. Yes, of course, yes." He slid the ring on her finger and it fit perfectly. They kissed across the table, and the other diners applauded, and Violet felt like she was living inside one of the love stories she sold in her bookstore. They were married in the spring, a small ceremony in the botanical gardens with her family and his business partners and what felt like half the neighborhood. Violet wore a simple white dress, and Zachary cried when he saw her walking down the aisle. They wrote their own vows. She promised to always recommend him books he did not know he needed. He promised to always make time for the things that mattered. The reception was at his penthouse, which they had slowly transformed into something that felt like both of them. Her books on his minimalist shelves. Her string lights wound through his expensive furniture, a life they had built together, piece by piece. "I cannot believe you are stuck with me now," she said as they danced to their first song. "Stuck with you? I am the luckiest man alive." He pulled her closer. "You changed everything, Violet. You made me remember that life is supposed to be about more than work and success. It is supposed to be about connection and love and the things that make you feel alive. You changed me too. You made me believe that love does not have to be practical or safe. That sometimes the best things are the ones that scare you a little." They honeymooned in Scotland, visiting the Highlands from the mystery she had recommended him that first week. They hiked through misty valleys and stayed in cozy bed and breakfasts and read books by the fire in the evenings. It was perfect back home. Life continued. She ran the bookstore and he ran his company, but he cut back his hours, delegating more, prioritizing differently. They had dinner together every night. They took weekends to visit her family or escape to the coast. They built a life that felt balanced and real. In their second year of marriage, Violet discovered she was pregnant. They had talked about having kids eventually, but this was sooner than planned. She was terrified and excited in equal measure. "What if I am terrible at this?" She asked Zachary as they sat on the couch, her hand on her still flat stomach. "You will not be terrible. You are amazing at everything you care about." "That is not true." "It is. You took a failing bookstore and turned it into a community hub. You took a workaholic billionaire and taught him how to live. You will be an incredible mother." She leaned into him. "We are really doing this. We really are." Pregnancy was hard. Morning sickness, exhaustion, and the constant anxiety that something would go wrong. But Zachary was there through all of it, holding her hair when she was sick, rubbing her feet when they swelled, reading parenting books with the same intensity he had once brought to business reports. She gave birth to a daughter in late winter, a tiny perfect thing with dark hair and Zachary's eyes. They named her Iris, after Violet's grandmother who had first taught her to love books. "She is beautiful," Zachary whispered, holding their daughter for the first time with tears streaming down his face. "She looks like you. She looks like us." Parenthood was chaos. Violet took 3 months off from the bookstore, hiring a temporary manager, and focused on learning to keep a tiny human alive. Zachary took paternity leave too, the first time he had ever voluntarily stepped away from work for more than a week. They stumbled through it together, exhausted and overwhelmed and happier than Violet had ever been. When she went back to work, they figured out a new routine. Zachary adjusted his schedule even more, working from home 2 days a week so he could be with Iris. They hired a nanny for the other days, a kind woman named Sarah who fit seamlessly into their lives. "I never thought I would be this person," Zachary said one night as they watched Iris sleep in her crib. "What person?" "The person who leaves work early for bath time. The person who cancels meetings because his daughter smiled at him. The person whose life is about more than the next deal. Do you miss it? The way things were before?" "Not even a little." He wrapped his arm around her waist. "This is better than anything I ever built. This is real." Iris grew as babies do. First smiles, first laughs, first words. Violet brought her to the bookstore sometimes, setting up a playpen in the back office, and customers fell in love with her. Zachary turned one of the rooms in their penthouse into a nursery that looked like something from a magazine, all soft colors and whimsical decorations. On Iris's first birthday, they threw a party at the bookstore, inviting everyone who had become part of their extended family. Her biological family, his business partners who had become friends, the neighbors who had watched their relationship unfold. The store was packed with people and laughter, and a cake shaped like a stack of books. "Look at what we made," Violet said to Zachary as they watched Iris smash cake into her face. "I am looking." He kissed her temple. "And I cannot believe how lucky I am." 2 years later they had a son. Oliver was calmer than Iris had been, an easy baby who slept through the night early and smiled at everyone. Zachary took paternity leave again, and they settled into the beautiful chaos of 2 kids. Violet expanded the bookstore, buying the space next door when it became available, and turning it into a children's section with a reading area and regular story times. It became known as the best place for kids' books in the city, and she loved every minute of it. Zachary continued to evolve too. He started a philanthropic arm of his company, focusing on literacy programs and small business loans. He said Violet had inspired it, but she knew it was his own goodness finally finding an outlet. On their 5th anniversary, they went back to the bookstore after closing, just the 2 of them. Zachary had arranged for his parents to watch the kids. They walked through the aisles, remembering. "I came in here not knowing what I was looking for," he said, "and I gave you books. You gave me so much more than books." He pulled her close, there among the shelves. "You gave me a life, Violet, a real life full of love and purpose and meaning. Every book you recommended led me to you. The recommendations always meant me," she said, smiling. I just did not know it at first. When did you know? That day you came back after finishing the first 4 books. You looked so alive, so open. I knew then that I was in trouble. Good trouble, the best trouble. They kissed surrounded by books, by the stories that had brought them together and the life they had built from that first chance meeting. Outside, the city moved on, people hurrying through their lives. But inside page and prose, in the warm glow of string lights and the smell of paper and ink, Violet and Zachary had found everything they needed. Years passed in the way they do, marked by birthdays and holidays and the small moments that make up a life. Iris started school and discovered she loved to read, just like her mother. Oliver showed an aptitude for numbers, just like his father. The bookstore thrived, becoming a landmark in the neighborhood. Zachary's company grew, but he kept his priorities straight, always making time for family, for the things that mattered. They took trips as a family, to beaches and mountains and cities full of bookstores for Violet to explore. They had family dinners every night, chaos with 2 kids, but exactly the kind of chaos that made life worth living. They stayed in love, working at it the way you have to work at anything worth keeping. On their 10th anniversary, Zachary arranged for a night away, just the 2 of them. They went back to that first restaurant, sat at that table by the window, but this time they were different people than they had been. Older, tireder, marked by parenthood and life, but also fuller, richer, more whole. 10 years, Violet said, looking at the ring on her finger that she never took off. Best 10 years of my life. Even better than building a billion-dollar company, not even close. He reached across the table, taking her hand. That was just money, this is everything. She thought about that first day, about the man who had walked into her bookstore looking for something he could not name. About the books she had given him, each one a piece of herself. About how neither of them had known that every recommendation was leading them to this, to a life built together, to a love that had surprised them both. I love you, she said. I love you too. He smiled, the same smile that had transformed his face that first week. What are you going to recommend me next? How about a lifetime together? Will that work? That will work perfectly. They left the restaurant and walked through the city, hand in hand, 2 people who had found each other in the most unexpected way. A billionaire and a bookstore owner, existing in different worlds until those worlds had collided in the best possible way. The bookstore still stood on its corner, lights glowing in the window, a haven for anyone looking for a story. And inside those walls, Violet had found the greatest story of all. Not one written in pages, but one lived in moments and choices and love that grew deeper with every passing year. Zachary had walked into her bookstore buying everything she recommended, never expecting that the recommendations meant her. But they had, from that very first book. Every story she chose was a piece of her heart, offered up to a stranger who became her everything. And in the end, that was the best recommendation she ever made.